What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be doing a Star Wars video about a scene in an episode of Star Wars Rebels, more specifically the scene between old Ben Kenobi and Darth Maul. A lot of people felt cheated by this scene because they wanted a long, epic duel, but I'm hoping that a video explaining this scene in more detail will help people understand the depth and gravity of it, even though it was so short. So let's get into it. So, initial greetings and intentions. We start with this scene. We're actually going to start with why Maul was on Tatooine in the first place. Darth Maul was on Tatooine because he was looking for that Obi-Wan. He knew he was there. He saw the thing about the twin sons. Now, I'm going to start off by saying I'm not the biggest Rebels fan in the world. I'm not the biggest fan of that show. There's a few things that I have liked in Rebels up to this point, but not a whole lot. I'm just not into it. I don't really like the art style, but this episode was amazing in my opinion. As a longtime Star Wars fan, like I've pretty much been a Star Wars fan since I was 3 years old. It is one of the greatest moments in Star Wars that I have ever seen. It is definitely one of the best fights, even though it is so short. And I'm hoping if you don't already feel that way, hopefully you'll be able to feel a little bit of that by the end of the video. But he's searching for Kenobi, and he finds him. Now, upon this initial confrontation, we see Obi-Wan kind of confronting Maul, and he's going around the fire, and you know it's. You gotta wonder how these two are feeling at the very beginning of this fight. You know, they have not seen each other in such a long time. There's such a grudge between the two. Maul hates Obi-Wan because of what Obi-Wan did to him. Obi-Wan, not the biggest Darth Maul fan, because of how Darth Maul, because of what Darth Maul did to Qui-Gon. He killed Qui-Gon Jinn right in front of Obi-Wan. There's a long rivalry, we'll say, between the two. And so it's really intense to see them meet up after all this time, and to see that Maul still has such a strong resentment for Obi-Wan. And it's interesting to see Obi-Wan's reaction of Maul. Now, Maul assesses Obi-Wan, that you know he's living in squalor, that he's gone from this, you know, you can tell by kind of his dialogue and his attitude toward Obi-Wan that he feels like Obi-Wan has gone from being this, you know, hero of the Republic, this general, this great war hero, this beloved man, to a guy sitting in squalor in the middle of the desert, a hermit, abandoned by the world, you know, because that really, and Obi-Wan's response to him is you know that he's risen above the things that have placed him there, and we'll get back to that a little bit later in the video. But you know, it's really this goes to show the difference between Maul and Obi-Wan as characters, and kind of how they've progressed very, very differently as people, because we have Maul, who he's really not let anything go, and we have Obi-Wan, who's managed to kind of look at his life and say, like, wow, you know, like he's been able to maybe deal with some of the things, is the impression we get from this scene. Maybe he's been able to deal with a lot of the mental traumas that have come from what happened to him, whereas Maul has probably not, because he's been so single-minded on getting just his vengeance on everyone. Now, we see that Obi-Wan is kind of reluctant to pull out the lightsaber. He doesn't really want to. We kind of see that he's, you know, like, just kind of walking around the fire. He's maybe trying to talk Maul out of it a little bit. But we see that Maul starts to kind of assess why Obi-Wan's on Tatooine, because Obi-Wan doesn't seem like a broken man. You know, he tells Maul, you know, I've risen above, I'm not living in squalor. So he doesn't seem broken. Maul notices this, and so he starts to try and kind of pry at maybe why is Obi-Wan on Tatooine, because he knows this guy. I mean, he fought him in the Clone Wars. In this continuity, he's alive, and he fought him in the Clone Wars. And, you know, he's pushing that. He's really pushing that envelope to see why Obi-Wan's there, and he hits the nail on the head. He's protecting, not something, someone, and that's when Obi-Wan ignites his lightsaber. And because even though you can kind of tell Obi-Wan's a little reluctant to do this, you know, he has to now. And the reason I say he has to is because he cannot let Maul go, knowing that, because what if Maul is captured by the Empire? What if Maul is you know, what if Maul turns on them? What if Maul tells somebody that Obi-Wan is there guarding somebody? He can't let that happen. What if Maul goes after the chosen one? If that's Maul, who believes it is, which he says later at the end of the fight, you know, he's obviously come to that conclusion that perhaps that's who Obi-Wan is guarding. But So Kenobi ignites his saber, and we're going to get into the fight now. This is one of the coolest fights in Star Wars, and I'm going to explain why. So, history. If you're a Star Wars fan, you probably know that George Lucas, based a lot of stuff in Star Wars on like old type of samurai movies, stuff like that. That's how this feels. It's very quick. It's very fast. It's very brief. He ignites the saber, and they're kind of just staring each other down. There's not some big long fight between the two characters, and not some big long fight between Maul and Obi-Wan. They kind of just size each other up, and then they both go in for kind of this quick thing, and it's just over so fast, and it feels very samurai-like. In fact, when Obi-Wan is standing around, if I can find maybe a decent picture, I feel like Obi-Wan, when he's kind of standing around the campfire in the back, and he hasn't drawn his lightsaber yet, he kind of looks like a samurai. He's got kind of like this bloated, he's got these flowing robes, and they're kind of bloated around him, and he's kind of, got his like arms folded, like he could draw his sword, but he's not going to. It just looks really cool. Feels very samurai-like. Now, going deeper into the Star Wars lore, we see Obi-Wan do 3 poses, and I'm going to try to get pictures of these in the video. The first one we see him do is kind of like an over the back of the head thing. That is the Soresu stance. That is the opening stance for Soresu. We see him do this in episode 3 before he fights General Grievous. This is Obi-Wan's primary style of combat, but it is a very defensive style. It's entirely based around defense. Some people question if it even has offense. But Mace Windu states in, I believe, I haven't read it in a while, but I believe it's the Revenge of the Sith novelization, he states that Obi-Wan is the master of Soresu. Whether that means the greatest master of all time or just of the era, we don't really know. But, and how would Mace Windu know that anyway? It's very arguable whether he's the best of all time, but he's very, very good at Soresu. But it's a defensive style. It's almost entirely based on defense, if not entirely. So that's really going to drag out the fight. So we see him switch to another position where the sword is kind of stretched out in front of him. And that is Shi-cho. That is an opening stance for Form 1, which is Shi-cho, the way of the Sarlacc, I believe. And he, that's good at fighting off multiple opponents. So the thought process behind that is maybe, Maul he's got 2 blades on that sword. Maybe he's thinking, okay, I can, maybe combat both of them and then, kind of go for a strike or something like that. But we see him quickly switch out of that. And this is where the fight gets really, really cool. We see him take the lightsaber up by his head like a baseball bat. We see him like baseball bat the lightsaber. This is why this scene is so cool, because that is the opening stance of Form 4, Ataru. And the reason that is so cool is because that is also, we see 2 people baseball bat up their lightsaber like that in the films. We see Qui-Gon do it when he's fighting Maul with Obi-Wan in episode 1, and we see Yoda do it, I believe, before he fights. We see him do it with the clones outside the Jedi Temple, and I think he does it when he fights Dooku in episode 2 as well. I haven't seen episode 2 in a while, but I think he does it in that scene as well. But he really goes to baseball bat up the lightsaber, and that is so cool. And the reason that is so cool is because Qui-Gon, his master, is also an Ataru specialist, and this is the relevance of him doing that. And again, I'm going to try to find some pictures of this. I'm not really comfortable doing video clips, so we'll see how it goes. But basically, Maul, he kind of baits Maul. And this goes really into the fight itself, and the shortness of the battle is that it was all mental. This was all a mental thing. We see Obi-Wan kind of take a position with the Soresu, then we see Maul kind of adjust his position. Then we see him going to Shi-cho. He stays there for kind of a second. Then he kind of like deliberately and slowly places himself into the Ataru stance. Very meaningful. Obviously they did this. Obviously they did it on purpose regardless, but it's, oh man, like they really took their time with this scene. Amazing scene. One of the best things that I've seen in Star Wars for sure. It was really great. And the choreography of the fight that follows makes this even better. We see him go, it's flipped. I think it's flipped. So he's going left, right, and then he goes for the middle. Now, and it's 3 strikes. Now we see Darth Maul, he goes for the top left, he goes for the bottom right, but then we see him try to use the middle bar of the lightsaber to hit Obi-Wan in the face, which if we go back, and again, I'm going to try to find still images of this, we see him do this same thing in the fight with Qui-Gon. This was in fact the moveset that killed Qui-Gon Jinn in The Phantom Menace, the left, right, and up. So presumably this is perhaps a move, the Darth moveset that Darth Maul has, whether it's a Juyo moveset, or whether it's from a different form, and he's just incorporated that into the fierceness of Juyo as a style. He's gone left, right, and then middle, which is what he used to kill Qui-Gon. Now, this is why this is amazing. Maul, you kind of got to wonder if maybe Maul even realizes whether that was the exact sequence that killed Qui-Gon or not. Perhaps he knows that is a very effective sequence against the Taru users based on experience. Maybe that's what he figured, like he sees Obi-Wan open with that. But the thing with Obi-Wan is he did not forget. Obi-Wan didn't forget. If you go back to episode 1 and you see Obi-Wan, he's sitting there wide-eyed, like staring at this battle between his master and Darth Maul, praying that this gate will go down so that he can get in there, so that he can save him. But it just doesn't go down in time. It just doesn't go down in time, and he has to sit there and watch. He didn't forget that. That's something that Obi-Wan has remembered for his whole life. And this actually, in my opinion, it kind of harkens back even to earlier in the dialogue before the fight, when they're talking about festering and rising above. This really denotes this in a way. Maul is so single-minded with purpose and intent for things that have happened, that he maybe doesn't even think about things that have happened. He's so intent on his revenge, on getting his revenge on the Sith and on Sidious and on Kenobi and all these people who have wronged him in his life, that he's never been able to move on. He stayed stagnant in that desire and in that belief over all these years, and he's kind of festered, like it's festered inside of him, and it's kind of made him less than what he was. Like if you look at Darth Maul, in episode 1, he's kind of like this silent, strong, proud, kind of like warrior assassin guy, whereas, you see him in Clone Wars and you see him in Rebels, and he's a little deranged. He's kind of lost it a little bit, even after the spider legs, which we're not going to get into that, but, even after the spider legs, it's really... And it's just so crazy. It's just so crazy because, and the voice actor does a really good job of that. Maul's very twisted now. He's become less than what he was. Whereas Obi-Wan has had time, and he says he's risen above. So that does imply that Obi-Wan has, risen above maybe some of the things that have gone on. The Anakin and the Jedi being destroyed, and his master's death. Obviously, he was able to get over that, but he hasn't forgotten. He's gone back and he's thought about all these things, and he's dealt with them emotionally and mentally. Obi-Wan didn't forget. He remembers that this is the exact sequence that killed Qui-Gon. He remembers that this is the sequence, so that's what he uses. That's why he goes into that Ataru stance, is because he's trying to bait Maul into going after him the same way he went after Qui-Gon, and it works. And that's really just, it shows the degradation of the two. Obi-Wan has grown. Maybe we don't know about his power or his combative abilities with a lightsaber. Some people think he's a lot weaker. Some people think he's a lot stronger. In the Force, I wouldn't be surprised if he was stronger, simply because Star Wars characters, they seem to be just stronger with age. Like, I understand they have to train to actually get that, but the thing of that is like, you see Dooku, he's an old man, he's very powerful. Yoda's very old, he's very powerful. Sidious is old, he's very powerful. I see Ben Kenobi as potentially being a better Force user than the young one, but that's my own personal opinion. However, we do see in this particular scene, that he's grown as a person, whereas Maul really hasn't. Over the years, he's kind of deteriorated, and we see that, by the quickness of the fight. And that's, they went so in deep with looking for lore from the various movies, the EU stuff with the lightsaber stances, the just the history of the characters in the Clone Wars, even making references to just earlier in the episode, like a minute ago with the dialogue. It's so great, and it all flows together so well. Really a very artfully done scene. Absolutely beautiful. Now, in the post-fight, Maul initially, after you cut the lightsaber, they give a little bit of his face, and he looks very shocked. Like maybe he wasn't expecting it to go that fast. Like he just looks like he's like, wait a minute, like he hasn't really completely processed, or at least that's how I processed the look on his face. Now, with the dialogue that the two characters show after that, Maul asks him, you know, is he the chosen one? And we don't really hear a lot of hatred in Maul's voice. You know, he's just, it almost sounds accepting, which is really, it's kind of ironic to hear kind of a peaceful tone from Maul in that situation, because it's kind of over. Like, it's finally over. Like, he did, you know, he struggled for so long, and you know, he's done so much, that it kind of makes sense for him to just die. Like, you know, well, it feels like it should almost be like a peaceful thing for him. Like, he can finally just rest, which sounds crazy, but, you know, he's been going so long, just anger, hatred, fueled nonstop. It tears him apart, you know. It's crazy. But anyway, so we see him ask Obi-Wan if it's the chosen one. Obi-Wan replies, it is. Now, you could argue who they're talking about in this situation. Obviously, Maul is referring to the person that Obi-Wan is protecting when he asks that. Who Obi-Wan is talking about? I mean, we do hear him say, Episode 3, "You were the chosen one!" And there was a whole ambiguity in the prequels of whether he was or not. And ultimately, Vader technically was the one who killed the Sith. He was the one that threw the Emperor over the railing of the Death Star. And he was also the one, he also technically caused his own death by picking Palpatine up and allowing himself to be electrocuted that way. So he kind of did fulfill, air quote, the prophecy in that respect. If you consider bringing balance to the Force to mean that. Even if you consider it the other way, he technically did leave 2 Sith, 2 Jedi. There were other surviving Jedi, but, you know, like, for the films, you know, two Sith, Obi-Wan and Yoda, two Jedi, you know, or Obi-Wan, 2 Sith, Obi-Wan and Yoda, I'm sorry. 2 Sith, we have Palpatine and Vader, and 2 Jedi, Obi-Wan and Yoda. That would definitely backwards. But, and then we also see, you know, two actually kind of neutral characters in Leia and Luke who have not, their fates have not really been decided yet. Well, they were, because we saw them in later movies, but, besides that point. So he kind of did bring balance to the Force, no matter how you look at it, but he says he is, so maybe he is referring to Anakin, and Darth Maul says he will avenge us, and we kind of see a very sad look on Obi-Wan's face, and maybe that's because Obi-Wan knows that, you know, Anakin is the chosen one. Or you could make the argument that, you know, maybe Obi-Wan is really just thinking that maybe he's just sad because Maul dies, which also makes sense to a degree. It's not something you'd think he'd be sad about, but you have to understand that he will avenge us. What does he mean when he says us? Well, they're kind of 2 sides of the same coin in a regard. They've been through a lot together on opposite sides of it, but, you know, he was there when Qui-Gon died. He was the only one who was there when Qui-Gon died other than himself, and Qui-Gon, obviously. You know, he was there throughout the Clone Wars. You know, him and Anakin fought against Maul and Savage. How many times? It's kind of like the punctuation at the end of a sentence, or like the end of a book. It's bittersweet. Like, you know, you finally get this thing you wanted. You finally get to the end of it, but it's over. Like, and that's really kind of the last piece of his. I'm not going to say the last piece because he's got Luke and everything like that, but in a way, that's kind of the last piece of the Clone Wars for him, which is it's his old life. Like, that's, you know, it probably dredges up a lot of feelings for Obi-Wan. So that makes a lot of sense in that scene for it to be so sad. Obi-Wan's also very empathetic, so maybe he understands that Maul has had a very difficult life, and that's why you see that kind of sad look on his face. Or maybe he's just sad because at the end of the day, Maul's still all about revenge. He will avenge us, and maybe that's why Obi-Wan is sad, is because even at the tail end, Maul really can't let that go. But after that, we see Obi-Wan go to the farm, which is a very sensible move on Obi-Wan's part. He needs to make sure they're okay. Maul is not an idiot. He's not he's a Darth Sidious or a Dooku in terms of like manipulating or planning or whatever. But he's not an idiot. He could have sent some people out to look for something, or, you know, maybe he had other people there that were trying to find Obi-Wan and they stumbled onto the farm or something. Maybe it's a logical choice to go to the farm to check on Luke, make sure everything's okay. And we hear Aunt Beru, at least what I understand to be the original audio from A New Hope. That's the way I interpreted that. It sounds basically exactly like her audio from A New Hope. So I'm thinking it's that. Maybe it's just a really good voice actress copycat, but I'm pretty sure it's the original audio from A New Hope because it sounds exactly like it. Luke. But yeah, that was a really great scene. It was actually a pretty good episode overall. The only one that I felt really compared to it was the one with Ahsoka and Darth Vader, which maybe I'll do a video on later. I know that episode happened a long time ago, but I'm just kind of getting into this, so maybe I'll do an episode on that later. But that was also very sad. And Clone Wars, I felt had a lot of good moments that a lot of people underrate. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of the show as a whole, I did think it had a lot of great moments. But yeah, anyway, guys, thank you for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you didn't really have a great appreciation for this scene before now, I hope that now maybe you have a little bit more appreciation for the scene itself and all of the things it represented. If you still hate it and think they should have had some ridiculously long, drawn-out, crazy lightsaber fight, that's understandable as well. But I'm glad they went this route instead of the fan service route, because I think it's still a very appreciable, very respectable way to end this character and kind of who I don't necessarily know, who I don't really feel should have been alive in the first place. But this scene, in my opinion, almost justifies, not quite, but almost justifies the fact that he's still alive and still exists. But anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video.